Let's get a cheers, brother.
Cheers,
Thank you for doing this. Happy New Year too.
Appreciate the invite.
We were talking off camera. You said something I kind of wanted to bring back up. You said money supports money.
Oh yeah, at a high level.
Yeah.
Like, so if you think about people that already have multiple millions of dollars, they've already invested time in developing this team that surrounds them, right? And those people are essentially their core unit. And so when they go to do another project, if they're gonna involve somebody outside of that core unit, it's gonna be somebody else that has a core unit. And so they're essentially just divvying up their abilities amongst other people who have already demonstrated those abilities. And so what I was saying is that I don't fault anybody for that. And so if somebody wants to break through that, you have to go the extra mile to demonstrate the fact that you have something that's of value to this group that already has an established team that has already proven themselves over and over and over and over and over again. It's kind of like somebody trying to do concerts and be adjacent to Live Nation, but then want Live Nation to put them on. Why? Right. We've already done this everywhere. What is it different that you can do? And I would say to that, it might be somebody that does set design. Like, I don't know if you saw that Fenty fashion show. In the Fenty fashion show, my background is architecture, so I looked back at the set. I can't remember the dude's name that did it, but they designed this set kind of like a classical, like maze almost. And it looks like a painting. Like the stage, like the backdrop of the stage looks like a painting. So this person has a value that they might bring to an organization like Live Nation or an organization like somebody else that puts on concerts. So I feel like in any space that you work in, if you're trying to get in the room with the people that got the multiple billions of dollars, they have to see that there's some
added value.
Yeah, added value, or like an intangible that they just that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when I first started DJing, and I was trying to DJ at Club Dream. The promoters at the time were like, "Well, yeah, we could book you here, but what's your added value? What do you bring?
Yeah.
You know, why are we gonna pay you to be here?" And this is 12 years ago, and I couldn't even answer the question. Like, I didn't know what I was like, I mean, what you mean? I'm dope. I'll just come and I'll play music.
Make it happen.
But for them, that was me thinking artistically, not thinking business-wise. I'm thinking like, they have to pay me, so why are they gonna incur the expense of me if I'm not offsetting that expense?
I call that the real and the feel. So like, you can approach things based on how you feel. Like, I feel like I'm gonna do good at this, right? I'm gonna make this hat because I feel like it's gonna move, right? But then there's real, right? Which is your analytics, your numbers, like things that you could actually prove, right? And most people avoid the real, like how women would walk past the scale, like, oh, I'm not, but I'm working out, I'm posting all these pictures, but I ain't touching that scale. Like that, I call the real and the feeling. You gotta be aware of both, right? And you gotta be able to move in between both, because sometimes you have to go with the feeling against whatever the quote unquote proof is to take a risk. Like perfect example, like with my brand, I did a hat for the culture. It's a McDowell's hat, right? And you have that hat, right? So initially when I made the hat, it was like comedic. Like we're not gonna sell this thing, right? And mind you, there's a whole slew of issues that I had to think about in determining whether or not I was gonna make it or not, right? So I had to do some research on copyright issues and all that type of stuff, and to realize that I was in the clear. But at the same time, I was like, man, it's dope to me. I feel like it'll be dope, right? But based on things that we had done in the past, it's not gonna be successful. So I still did it, like against the advice of my team, against the advice of like people that I spoke with, and then it just went like wildfire. Yeah. So I still think that sometimes you gotta find your way to navigate against the grain a little bit to really push forward, but more often than not, like you just need to be aware of what's real.
That's an instance where trusting your instinct went wrong in a sense, like because initially you didn't want to do it, but then it's like, oh shit.
No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think my instinct. So you ever read the book Blink by chance? No. So I can't tell you the author, but Blink is basically about trusting your intuition. And so one of the stories in it is about this sculpture, right? And they're trying to assess whether or not the sculpture is real or not, right? Like if it's because apparently had been found, and it was like made before Christ and all of this stuff. And the person who took it in, their initial reaction to it was like, I don't know. But then they did step after step after step after step after step to test it. And all of those steps were telling them that it's real, it's real, it's real, it's real, it's real. And really what it was somebody knew what steps you would take to qualify this. And so because of that, I'm already prepared for that. But your own reaction told you at the very beginning that this wasn't real, and you were right at the very beginning. And so, yeah, in that instance, I was on the fence, and I decided to go against the grain, and it just worked out. Sometimes it doesn't though.
I was gonna say, how many times is that like a frequent occurrence? How many times does that happen?
Man, I'm wrong. I'd say at least 50% of the time right now.
Damn.
Yeah, at least 50% of the time. And it's more so because initially when I was creating as an artist, right? So I was creating with the feel in mind. Yeah. I wasn't looking at data, I wasn't looking at analytics. I was like, this is dope to me. Right. I am an artist, this is representative of me. I'm gonna push it out there. Not thinking about commercializing it, not thinking about who's gonna absorb it, because quite frankly, I didn't necessarily care. It was made for the people that liked it. So if you didn't like it, you're not the customer for that thing. Right. But as I move on and building this brand and then bringing other people in, then I have more liability to make sure that my decisions are successful, right? And so now I'm more tuned in. Sometimes I'll, slap my own hand and say, no, we can't go that direction. People aren't ready for that yet. Or no, we can't go that direction. That's too much of a niche market. It won't have mass exposure. And so for those projects, they might be tabled, they might be temporarily tabled, but it's just something that I had to recognize just from a business standpoint, being an artist first, which I am, but still having to maintain bottom line of the business.
What do you say to somebody who says that they don't see how having a hat company could be that intricate in the strategy behind it, the analytics, the algorithms, the numbers? Like, it's just hats.
Yeah, ask them how many pairs of sneakers they have, and ask them, how many t-shirts do they have, right? And then you start to see and realize that there is an opportunity, there is a business there, right? But so for me, I always wondered why the crown was like an offset of an outfit, like a second thought or a last thought or a leftover in the design process. So, because if you look at kind of traditionally hats, how they were made and how they're advertised, it's mostly as a complement to the outfit. It's not the thing that determines what the outfit's going to be, right? And so for me, I was like, man, this is the crown. This is the crown of the culture, because really it's only the culture that's rocking with these like this. You don't go into a business office and see people wearing hats like that. Right. I was like, I want to invest time in really determining what else could be done, what innovative things could be done to shift the way in which headwear is thought about, to shift the way in which people approach putting together an outfit by starting with their crown. And so for me, design became the foray into really making that determination. And so anybody that would say that that's not a valid approach, then they haven't seen our numbers, right? They haven't seen how many people are absorbing this now, right? And the crescendo effect that's happening with this brand that is solely focused on headwear. Although that wasn't always the case. Like, I started out doing tees, doing shorts. I had a store in the Bahamas. Oh, wow. That's what I was actually mentioning to you when we were off camera, because you had a store, Stock Exchange. Yeah. And I actually knew about that then. Wow. And at the time had all intentions to come and visit you. But what's funny is when you try to do something creative, you got a lot of stops along the way. Man. So there was another store down here called Culture Kings. I remember. You remember them? Yep. So at the time, my partner and I, who's my best friend, David Wallace, out of Bahamas, which is where our store was. Our store was actually in Freeport, Bahamas. Wow. We were painting tees. So I don't know if you remember Miskeen. Yes. Back in the day.
Yeah, I had a lot of Miskeen shit. And
I don't know if you remember in Tallahassee, Afanati, that was designed by Lump. He's a tattoo artist here, and a contemporary artist. But anyways, we fell within that same lane. And so I remember going into Culture Kings and I had this shirt that I did. I can't remember what was on it, but it was painted. And I take this one shirt and I'm going in there. I got all the confidence in the world. I'm like, man, I'm about to sell this to them. But not only am I going to sell this to them, I'm going to sell the idea of this. And we were about to take over all of the racks in here. I go in there and I show the dude, it was an Asian dude, the shirt. And he's like, yeah, man, nah. Nah, bro.
Like that.
Yeah, man, nah. And I remember like being devastated on the inside, but having to maintain like this aura, and I gave up. Like I took the note, and I didn't even try to push it anymore at that point in time. Like, and then I had like this bravado about myself. Like I had to prove myself, so I bought a shirt when I was in there. So I went in there to sell something I left out with less money in my pocket because of how I felt, right?
Oh, man.
And then I think you grow beyond those things, but it takes those like minuscule loss. Because now I would look at that no as like, okay, on to the next. Like I wouldn't even think about it. Like it would right off my shoulder. But at the time, like that was big for me. That specific store was a cultural center that a lot of people didn't even know about. Yeah. And for me, it was like the holy grail for my brand to be in there. And then I get to the holy grail and they're like, nah, bro. Nah.
No, I mean, even when I was open in Stock Exchange, because the way it happened was I was managing a sneaker store in Aventura called Uptown. And, it's a privately owned boutique. And one day the owner tried to basically reprimand me in front of a customer. And this is April 2009. And, the way I was brought up, being Guyanese and having that Caribbean background, the way people speak to me is very important, right? And so it's like a respect that I demand and it's a respect that I give. And the way he spoke to me in front of these two little girls buying their Ugg boots just sent me into, not physically, but mentally sent me to a place and I was like, I can't be here anymore. Yeah. And I quit that day. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna open my own store. Yeah. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. And somehow between April 2009 and 4th of July 2009, I found a location, hired a contractor, flew to New York and met with I forgot the name of the company, where you basically, they're the ones that have all the brands where you go, it started with a C. It's not Compound, it's something. But you go there and then they have the salespeople from each brand in the office. And then me, 28 years old, never been in the retail business before on the ownership side, pitching to them that they should let me carry their merchandise in my store. And they're like, well, where's the store gonna be? Yeah. It's Hollywood, Florida. Well, what's around Hollywood? What's in the area? Well, there's a restaurant here, there's a Ramada in here,
So it was like a consolidated showroom.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, yep. Okay. And just going in there and some brands telling me yes, but then some brands telling me, hell no. Like, no, why would we want to put our stuff in your store? Because then that's gonna become a representation of us. Yeah. You're nobody in this brick and mortar retail sales game. So, and I could have took those no's and been like, man, you know what, let me not even try. But something in me was like, nah, do this shit. Yeah. And 3 months later, like I had an actual store. And being the cashier, the stock boy, the security guard, the everything, doing it myself, I didn't really have any help. But what it taught me was that you can't let yourself be knocked down by the no's. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially the first one, because they said no. I went to 3 or 4 no's before I got to a yes. Yeah. And then when I got to a yes, I was like, oh shit, well I got one. And then I went to another one and said, well, G-Shock said yes. What about you, Nuka? You remember Nuka watches? Yeah.
So randomly enough, I can't remember his name either.
The owner?
The owner.
Matthew Wallman.
So I was at Magic and I ended up having to leave for something. I can't remember why I had to leave. I think maybe it was because I was in grad school. I had to get back. Like classes were getting ready to start. Well, Matthew, somebody in his family had an issue, so he had to leave too. We ended up sitting next to each other on our flight. So we had communicated for years on Facebook because Instagram wasn't out at the time. Right. And but he came, if I'm not mistaken, I think he came from an engineering background. which was like inspirational to me because I come from a architectural background, and so it's kind of like a tie-in into creating products from this body of knowledge that's not necessarily focused on that,
Right.
but it gives you a tool set to really deploy in that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was that. So you had Nuka watches there?
Yeah.
Did you get the belt too?
I had the belts, I had the watches, I had the little, like a little monster, rubber monster shit. Yeah, he actually came to the store and visited because he came here for, maybe it was Art Basel or something. Well, something he's in Miami, and he said, well, let me come see what the stuff looks like in the store. And I made it a point to where like Nuka was like the one of the primary pieces that like when you came in, I had like a nice glass case and shit, and it was like, yeah, I want to give him, because he was so nice about giving me, letting me carry the shit, and I was like, yeah, let me make sure you're front and center. So
I think they've shut down. Actually,
yeah, it was sad, man, because they were so. I ended up on Deco Drive about the watches. So I did Deco Drive, and it was like because I thought they were so dope. Yeah. And I don't know,
But I mean, I think he was ahead of his time though.
Yeah.
Because he was doing things like, he's basically creating different ways to tell time.
Yes.
And you had to understand yourself.
How to do it. Yeah.
Like how.
It was blocks, it was circles, it was dots.
Yeah. That was dope.
Yeah. Shout out to Matthew, man. But so your architectural background, but I want to go back because I don't remember where we met, but I knew when I met you, the thing that connected me to you was the fact that you went to FAMU.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
I was trying to think about that earlier, and I have no idea.
Yeah. I've had Walshy Fire on here. I've had Rico Love on here, all FAMU. And I'm just like, damn, like we really produced a lot of impactful people in all facets of entertainment and artistry. But what made you go to FAM?
Man, so my story is wild. So I didn't really know what it was to go to college. Like my mom didn't go to college. My father did later in life, but not around the time that I did. And so I thought it was similar to like going to high school. So you just show up and register. And I ended up having there was two things. One, a bunch of my friends were in the band. So my junior year or my senior year, I ended up joining the band solely to go to the Battle of the Bands in Orlando, right? Which means that you can only play one or two instruments that you can learn that quick. One is the cymbals, other is the tenor drum, right? So I was on the cymbals, and our band director left. And when our band director left, we ended up skipping out of our own school and finagling a way to play in the band of another school. This school, Suncoast, which is where Devin Hester went to school. Okay. And so we went up there and we had to basically shake the tree. Like we had to perform in front of their band so that they would allow us to go with them to the Battle of the Bands, which I feel like was all kinds of illegal. Like I know it had to, like it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And so I went. And I remember my friends telling me, because I didn't know about FAM's band. I didn't know anything about it. I'm just really like kicking it with my homeboys. They told me about going to this place. It was dope. I want to go. In order to go, I got to be in this band, so I'm going to just do that. Right. So we go, and I see FAM's band, but I don't think nothing of it, right? I think, oh, man, that's dope. We leave and we get back. And then my friends started to tell me about FAMU. Still didn't know anything. So my senior year, my brother was at Florida State. So I go up to visit him, and his boy looked like me. So his boy Ricky looked like me. And Ricky had, his ID, he was 21, and we go to the moon. and so I use his ID to get in the moon. I'm probably 17 years old at the time. And when I go in there, I'm like, man, I really want to be in Tallahassee, but I want to study architecture. And so my brother told me, I looked it up. Florida State didn't have architecture. Well, mind you, I didn't know that you had to apply to school. So all this time I'm like, I'm gonna go there, right? But that's it. So I ended up going to, on my senior year, some people, they take enough classes so they don't have a full course load in their senior year. That was me. And so I ended up going to kick it in my guidance counselor's office, and he's like, did you apply to school? I was like, apply? What you mean apply? Like, he's like, well, did you take the SAT? I was like, I took the PSAT that they gave us in class. He was like, well, first you got to take the SAT. I was like, all right, well, what do I have to do? So he gave me this paperwork, gave it to my mom, took the SAT, came back. I was like, all right, I'm going to college. He's like, nah, you still got to apply to school. I was like, well, where'd you go to school? He was like, FAMU. I was like, all right, I'll go there. And so he submitted my application. I think he submitted it to like a couple other schools, but then FAM never sent me an admission letter. I went back to his office. He had to call him. They said, you were good. And then he told me everything I had to do. And I ended up going to FAM. Best decision I ever made in my entire life. Unbelievable because I didn't know anything about it. Like, I'm not one of the people that come from the pedigree of a, FAMU father, FAMU mom, FAMU grandfather. But I would recommend that to anybody in the world, because you get there and you have all these skills. Like, I went there and I was anti anything established, right? Just coming from the hood. I was raised in West Palm. And so just coming from a place where it's like nothing is established, for me, getting the FAM and seeing people like join SGA, join dance troops and join all this, I'm like, nah, man. I cut anybody up in that dance troop. I outsmart anybody in SGA, and I'll get better grades than anybody in any of these other groups, right? And forget fraternity, sororities, none of that stuff. Like, I was like anti all of that, which is obviously a hypocrite because I ended up pledging. But what I did learn initially when I get there is like I'm starting to meet people who come from a different background than me, that come from the pedigree of somebody went to FAM, their dad's an architect, their dad's a lawyer, dad's a doctor, mom's a lawyer, mom's a doctor. And it started to change my perspective on what it was to do these established things, and started to help me understand that, these are formulaic things that lead you to a successful life. And so I always wanted to be an architect, so I studied architecture there. I'm actually a registered architect, but at the same time, I've always been a creative, designing clothes in high school, designing clothes at FAM, painting clothes at FAM, selling them, and even post-school painting, and just being a hustler and having that in my heart. And it was something that I felt like I needed to get away from, because I saw all of these people that I admired going on to their corporate careers and climbing up the corporate ladder. And I did that myself, right? I ended up leaving my gig last year to focus on this full time. But I think part of doing that was just proving myself that I could. Right. And then relinquishing that was allowing myself to really flourish within what I've created for myself already. But yeah, man, my path is not a traditional one in the slightest bit, not at all. But I appreciate it though.
Why architecture? Where did you wake up one day and be like, well, I want to get into architecture?
So I was 5 years old when I decided I want to be an architect. Wow. And it was because my parents, they gave me Legos, and I would build with the Legos, but they would set me up with these kids, and the kids would just be putting random Legos together, and I would build buildings. Like, I would design buildings as a 5-year-old kid. And I think I was probably like 6 or 7, and I did a church, and I built this church, and I built the roof to like it was a pitch roof, and I left an opening in the roof so that light would shine on the steeple. And my mom was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, she looks at this thing and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "Do you know what you're doing?" I was like, "Nah, I'm just, designing this." She was like, "That's architecture." Mind you, she could have said that's construction too. Mm-hmm. But when she said that's architecture, it stuck with me. And I was like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, that's what I want to do with my life. And so I got exposed to a whole bunch of different things along the way: graphic design, video editing, TV production, and like all of these other interests that I had. But I still always had this foundational interest at heart. So I decided I'm gonna just shoot to that and see where that leads me. And so I've designed schools, designed buildings, a couple residential spaces, and got licensed like 2 years ago. But at the same time, I still recognize that my passion is not architecture specifically, it's design and being a creative. So that can be expressed in architecture just as much as it can be expressed in headwear. And headwear is a space where I feel like there was an absence of creativity. Like, people, again, were just looking at that as an afterthought. Right. Like, I got a Nike outfit, so let me get a Nike hat with a Nike check. Right.
Is it architecture? Is it only considered architecture when you when it's a building, when it's a structure, like the term architecture applies to, you know.
Yeah, so so architecture is a mix between like art and tectonic, so like art and function. And so it's the combination of, you know, taking inspiration from external things, right? And combining that into something that can be experienced as a building, or even something perhaps sculptural, right? And so that is architecture, but I feel like I remember in one of my classes, it was like anything that's the built environment is architecture. So I remember asking them, I was like, well, would a TP be architecture? And they said, yeah, a TP is architecture. I said, okay, well, would a Adobe hut be architecture? Yeah, somebody had to design that. Somebody had to figure out the problems to make that happen. So I think there's a wide definition of it, but there's a small population of people that can practice it and say that they're an architect. And in fact, I think of the architects in the United States, is only 2% of them are black.
Damn.
0.02 are black women. Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a building doesn't get built without the architect first designing it, or structure doesn't get built.
I mean, it depends. Like if it's a house, there's like some leeway there. But outside of that, if it's going to be experienced by anybody other than yourself, then yeah, you gotta have an architect.
Because I'm fascinated by I guess what is architecture, because, you know, especially living here in Miami, and you drive downtown and they're always building something, and now it's like the structures they're getting crazy with designs, and I'm like, how do you curve
it's
concrete and stone, and how do you but the shape of things, I'm like, instead of it just being like perpendicular lines.
Exactly, I know exactly what building you're talking about. So if it's off of Biscayne, so that building was designed by Zaha Hadid, which is a female architect. She died 2 years ago, God rest her soul. But she was known for doing what's called deconstructivist architecture, which is like taking the idea of the form of a building being this rectangular object and ripping that apart. So her and another architect, Frank Gehry, they're known for that. And I believe that was the last building that she designed that was built. But like, it's a combination of both architect, structural engineer, civil engineer, interior designers, like plumber, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers. Like, the team is massive to accomplish something like that. And even some of the problems are solved by the contractor that's building it, because you never can get down to like this minuscule details in plans as much as one would like, because the speed to market is fast. And it's similar like in designing headwear. Like, it's basically like taking the process of designing a building and miniaturizing it into a product. Because if you looked at like my plans, they're called tech packs, to design headwear. Like, I'm using the same tools that I would use to design a building to design headwear. So AutoCAD, I'm using to design headwear. SketchUp, which is like, you can do 3-dimensional things, I'm using that to design, like on this hat. Like this piece here is 3-dimensional, right? So to do that, I did it in AutoCAD, SketchUp, then put it together in a overall tech pack, and then send it out, and then we go through iterative conversations to get it to the point where it's, you know, satisfies the original design. And it's the same thing with architecture, just on a more massive scale.
You know, you're speaking a language that I can relate to, because what a lot of people don't know about me is that I have a background in fashion design. So I used to design for Mecca.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, back in New York, Mecca, and then I did for 1 year. I did a David Baton Buffalo jeans. So when you talk about CADs and tech packs, like, I have like data CDs of tech packs in my crib right now from
Hey man, send them my way.
Hey man, listen. You know, because when I did stock exchange, the ultimate goal was to, okay, let me bring it back. I had a t-shirt line in high school.
I remember. Well, okay.
I remember
high school.
Yeah, high school.
I remember that stock exchange.
So I went to FIU the summer before my senior year, and I went to an entrepreneurship academy. And basically what they were doing is saying, we're gonna take 150 minority students and we're going to teach you guys how to write business plans. And whatever your business is, the top 3, we're going to grant you money to go start those businesses.
Word.
So I was like, well, what do I like? I like hip hop and I like clothes.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm like, well, I want to have a fashion line one day. I want to do that. And I wrote my business plan, ended up being the second place. Got $3,500 to start a business. Went, got it incorporated, got with my partner, came up with the design, the concept, everything. It was called a Q Gear, KUE.
Okay.
Which means knowledge plus understanding equals experience. Because I was on like my God body shit back then in 97, 98. And so we came up with this whole description. Still, yeah. You know, so we came up with this whole thing and you know, it's like, imagine it's 6th grade English class and the bell rings and I leave from Miami Killian High School where I went and I drive up to the mall at 163rd Street to a store called Law Apparel.
Ah, man, come on, man. I bought my first platinum FUBU shirt out of Law, man. Yeah.
I think I bought the one that had the writing, all the jeans, the denim outfit. Yeah. So I go in there and I'm like basically, again, talking to them and trying to, you know, convince them to carry my stuff and, you know, doing a consignment deal with them. And they said no. But the next person after that I met with was DJ EFN from Drink Champs. Because he had a store called Crazy Goods in Kendall. And he said, yeah, I'll carry it. And he's always been the same dude, like showing love. So he was the first one to actually carry like my little t-shirt shit in his store. And this is 97, 98. So when I started Stock Exchange, it was like with the idea of one day I want to take that concept that I had in high school, but then do it on a bigger scale because I have all the ideas in my head. I just got into so many other different things. I never had the opportunity to execute it at the level that I see it in my mind. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But the tech packs, doing all that shit for Mecca, for David Baton, I have files upon files of CADs. Yeah. And that's how I got doing Mecca designs. I was fortunate enough where I wasn't the best designer on the team, but I've had shit worn on The Wire, on HBO, like shit that I designed, ended up being on The Wire and shit like that. And, you know, doing all of that kind of forcing myself, because I didn't go to school for fashion design. I went to school for journalism. But I got an internship at Mecca in the marketing department. And I guess the way I dressed, the design director came to me one day and he was like, yo, man, you got a lot of style. Like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I work in the marketing department with homegirl over here. He was like, I mean, I need somebody on my design team. This person just quit. That's crazy. You're interning over there for free or you want to come make $35,000 a year? And at the time, I'm 23 years old. I'm like, well, 35, woo! I'm like 5 figures. Yeah, I'm like, so my 3rd day on my internship, I had to go to my friend and be like, look, I know I just started with you, but your man over here is offering me like a salary. So I'm gonna go over here with the designers. And then in there, that's when I taught myself how to learn Photoshop and Illustrator. That's crazy, man. That's when the industry is so different too, man. Cause like at that time, I don't know if you remember, but Mecca was out, but adjacent to Mecca was all of the rappers' brands. So you had Wu Wear, you had Sean John, you had even Outkast had a clothing line that they didn't wear. They didn't wear. And then I think Anichi was out like pushing at the time. Academics. Yeah, Academics. Which was the same, actually owned by the people that owned Mecca, but they treated Mecca like the stepchild.
Yeah, man. That was a beautiful time in streetwear. Like it was kind of like Bitcoin. Like it was like where if you strike right now, you're gonna make $1 million. And people were selling their brands left and right like crazy. And you still got some folks though that are like bringing back like old brands from actually like a little bit before that time. Like Cross Colors is coming back. They've been pushing their brand heavy out of LA. And there's a collective of designers that have worked in the industry for years that started this like Black Design Collective. They had a meeting for Black footwear designers, I think last September, if I'm not mistaken, in DC at the African American Heritage Museum. And or I probably said the wrong name, but people know what I'm talking about. And it's now like I think people are starting to realize the equity in our collective creativity, which I think is dope, man. I think that is dope. And I think you can't put a price on creativity. Like you can't, like it is infinitely valuable, you know? And that's what I'm starting to realize with myself in diversifying the things that I'm focused on while still maintaining primary focus on Dungeon Forward, which is the brand.
That's why when I first learned about you and the brand, I was drawn to it because I'm like, number one, he's FAMUing, he's black, and he's doing dope shit because the shit is actually, the product is actually incredibly designed. And I'm like, man, this is like, not only a fan of it, but coming from going through the channels of designing shit and being creative in that avenue, it's like, and obviously I never did headwear, so I don't know the intricacies of that, but
I'm still learning.
Man, I feel you. I feel what you're doing, brother. Like,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, man.
Why the name Dungeon Forward? What does that signify?
So the name of the company actually is Complex Apparel. And that was like, when we were painting, it was like, you know, these paintings are really complex. And I literally had an epiphany moment and came up with Dungeon Forward when myself and my partner were opening a store in the Bahamas. And he was going to be focused on a line that was directly influenced by Bahamian culture called 242, which is their area code. And I was going to be focused on kind of like our core brand, which didn't have a name, right? Or it could have been Complex Apparel, but I was over that, right? And miraculously, this name came to me, Dungeon Forward Fashion, ultimately dropped the fashion. But what it means to me was from the dungeon forward, or from nothing to something, which was my life story in 2 words. But on top of that, which is a story I don't tell as often, is like I always called the place that I designed like my dungeon, right? And so if you think of the term as a derivative of the word fashion forward, right? Fashion forward meaning like future, fashion, dungeon forward meaning like future, headwear, dungeon being like the place in which I design it. And then on top of that, when you're in this dark place designing, I feel like you have, or being creative, I feel like you have an obligation to take those ideas forward. Like I feel like it's a tragedy, the people that have ideas that don't do anything with them, that just let them simmer. You know, like that's tragic. And I've seen over my 35 years of life, ideas that I've kind of just benched come to fruition. A perfect example, Tide Pods, bro. I thought of that when I was like, I don't know, 12. Like, why do I always have to measure this and pour this in there? Like, you could just put a tablet in there.
Right.
And it was like, to me, it was like Tums, right? Like, or anything like that. And then ultimately they come up with that stuff. But yeah, man, that's so the name, think of it like from the dungeon forward, or from nothing to something.
Have you ever gotten any of your products to anybody from Dungeon family?
Let me think, man.
You mentioned to me earlier. You said you had a conversation with Andre.
I gave him. I can't believe I didn't say that. I definitely gave him a hat. Okay. So we did a hat for Black History Month a couple years ago called the Rise. We're actually dropping it again, but it's an all black version. But before it was in like the revolutionary flag color, so red, black, and green. And this one now only on the inside is red, black, and green. But while I was there, I gave him one of those. I gave Jerry Lorenzo from Fear of God, I gave him one. And I gave Virgil Abloh from Off-White. Right. I gave him one as well. But when I gave it to Andre 3000, I never really anticipated him wearing it because he wears beanies. Right. But at the same time, the meaning of it, he definitely respected. Yeah. And that was dope. And so the way that I met him is interesting too. So I went to Complex Con solely because I saw his name on it. Like I was like, I'm meeting him. Like, and so I get a flight, I go there, I find a ticket like when I get to LA, because I hadn't planned on going. And he had launched this shoe with this company called Tree Tour. And Tree Tour is like it's like a preppy like company. They did like polos for like old school preppy kids. It was known in Atlanta because similar to like polo down here in Miami, they had adopted that amongst the culture. And so he did that with them and spent like maybe 3 months in New York with Jeff Staple brand. And I know the old marketing director there. We were real cool. And so she would send me pictures of them. Like he's in the office again. I'm like, what? This is crazy. Like this dude is in your office. So I went And there were two girls that were running the tree tour booth. And so they just see me lingering. Like, I'm just like, I know he got to come over here at some point, right? And so the girl asked, she was like, hey, did you want to cop his collab shoe? I was like, fuck it, yeah, I'm gonna cop it. Yeah. I was like, does that mean I get to meet it? She's like, I'll make it happen, right? So I did, and I'm walking around. I keep lingering though, and finally I see her, and she's like, go back now, right? So I'm like, all right, bet. So I walk back over to the area, and there's a line like wrapping around the whole booth. And I'm like, ain't no way I'm standing in line. So when I get over there, she comes at me. She's like, all right, you, and then y'all. And so she brings me in, and so they do like a presentation in the back. And I'm like, where's the dude at? Because I saw him walking over. I did see him walking over. I'm like, where's Buddy at? Yeah. So we go in the back room, and there's like it's like a video in the dark, and they got shoes that are on the table. And there's lights on the shoes, and then there's a screen in the back, and then it flashes in the room like real bright. And he and Fonzworth Bentley are standing in the corner. In there, they were in the dark, just like watching people and see how they respond to the shoes. So when I see that, I'm like, oh shit. So she put me in the spot. So then after it's over, they're like, all right, everybody, you can leave, right?
You chill.
Come on, bro. Of course. So then I go back, and on the way there, I told you I was reading an article that was written in GQ. So I go back, I talk to him. I had the hat on me. I give him the hat. I tell him about the book, and I was like, yo, I want to give you a copy of this book because I have 2 copies, and it's very reminiscent of the article. He was like, bring it tomorrow. So I bring the book the next day, and he's doing like a live drawing because I think he had something like as a part of this where it was like, I will not draw in class. I will not draw in class. Like it was all about doodling. Like even the tissue paper in the box was like his doodles that he had created. And so I come back, I wrote something in the book, and I bring the book with me, and then he's right there. And as he's getting ready to leave, I was like, hey man, I got the book for you. We had the conversation before this. Like at this point, it was no opportunity to really have a conversation. I was like, hey man, I got the book for you. Mind if I get a picture? Right? He's like, oh man, of course, bro. Like, thank you. Thank you for bringing the book back. So I go, I pull up my phone, and I got the camera up. And I'm just looking at it, but I do not click the freaking. And then finally, I'm like, oh, because I was happy. I'm like, man, this is my idol, Andre 3000. I'm fanboying right now. And finally, I click the button, and his face is blurry as hell. I wish I had it on. I mean, I could show you a picture right now, but I have to dig through it. But it's the perfect picture of the moment, though, because it lets you know, like, I was in the moment, but also like trying to document it at the same time. But what I will say about him, he's very cerebral. That I noticed in just a brief moment that I connected with him, and he's also sensitive, just like any other artist, and is very cognizant of what he takes on to do. I mean, I remember his clothing line, I think was way ahead of its time too. Was it Benjamin Bixby or something?
Yeah. What does it mean to you to be an artist, because you classify yourself as an artist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And for a long time I wouldn't do it because I felt like I wasn't like classically trained as an artist. But to me, it means that you can authentically express yourself and put your humility in front of the masses, right? So like anytime somebody creates something like a painting or even a piece of headwear, like you are subjecting yourself to the judgment of that piece that you've created, that you've introduced to the world, something that you basically birthed because it didn't exist before. And so to me, being an artist is one of the most humble things in the world to be, because you're constantly expressing yourself. You're constantly opening yourself to criticism. And that is why I 100% claim it. Also, I do all of the traditional things within that space. Like I write, I have a screenplay that I've been working on for years, and I don't know when I'm gonna finish it. But the tentative title is The Originals. It's about immortality. A children's book named after my son who passed, but it's called Kodo Can Do. And so it's gonna be a collective of children's books about different professions, but it's going to be a kid acting out those professions. Like my mind is like absurd in the amount of things that I have on my plate to accomplish over the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah. But because of that, I've finally recognized like my own artistry and just accepted that and embodied that and claim it.
Right. It's like I was mentioning before, off camera about people, within the culture that try to limit you, maybe because they're projecting their own lack of drive and motivation or something. But because I never understood why anybody would attempt to tell another person what they can, should or shouldn't do, or shouldn't attempt to do. Yeah. Like, how do you know what my own internal creativity is capable of or not? Yeah.
And your judgment is subjective, right? So like if somebody's making music and I personally don't like it, I'm one person in a world of multiple billions, so it really ultimately doesn't matter what the person adjacent to you is. And honestly, that's what I like about the way that music is being distributed now. Like, because people can control their music distribution in a sense where it doesn't matter if 1 million people buy my album. I'll make the same amount of money if 100,000 people stream my album as I would if 1 million people would have purchased it because of the way the deals were orchestrated. So I think that that's bringing value to like the average consumer that's seeking out new music, that's seeking out new things. And I think in fashion, the marketplace is also getting broader as well because the barrier of entry is lower. Like, a lot of people are starting to realize, oh, I can go directly to these manufacturers and share my ideas with them, which is a risk, right? Because if you're manufacturing in Asia, more than likely your protections in the United States don't protect you in Asia, right? I have that same issue. But at the same time, I now am working with some of the same manufacturers that work with these massive headwear companies that have been around for hundreds of years, or at least 100 years. Yeah, and so I think that is starting to change how much creativity is exposed, which I think is a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing because it ends up being a lot of noise in the system. But overall, I think it's good because it gives people opportunity to get exposure.
Do you remember the day that you designed your first hat? Very first hat. You're sitting at the computer, you're doing the game, you're like, okay, design hat number 1.
So it was, so I designed 3 as my first collection, right? So I couldn't tell you which one of those that I did first because they were all done simultaneously.
Was it the FAMU hat, the 1887?
Nah, that's probably my 30th hat.
Oh shit. Oh, man.
Yeah. It was
which is when I found out about it, was that hat.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit,
okay.
FAMU hat. Dope. And it's dope. Yeah.
Nah, man, I appreciate that, man. And that hat was probably that hat was way delayed. Like, that was in the makings for a couple years. And I was a victim to my own like judgment of how people would receive me doing something that was so specifically focused, when my brand, I wanted it to parallel like Adidas Originals, right? And I didn't at the time want to be typecasted as somebody that was focused solely on collegiate apparel. And it's a stupid move. It was a stupid move. I was an idiot for really thinking of it in that way. But I definitely respect the fact that it was delayed because I think the design was that much better because of the delay. But my first hat, there was 3 of them. One was called the Orange Grove and the other 2 were called Ground Force Smoke and Ground Force Ruby. And Ground Force, similar to like Air Force, because I was tying back to like sneaker culture. And I wanted to create these classics that could be absorbed over time. And so this year, I'm actually bringing all 3 of those back during holiday season, so the latter end of the year. But what a lot of people don't know, and I didn't reveal this because it took me a while to sell out some of them, but it was only 26 of each of those. So if somebody has one, they have like a one of 26. They'll probably be mad that I just said that I'm doing it again. But it's gonna be definitely, it's still gonna be different because of the way in which we manufacture hairwear now. But when I first did those hats, it was because I ran into somebody that I saw that had on a 5-panel. And so 5-panel is kind of like our staple hat that we do. And I had never really seen one. And I was like, man, I actually like that hat. And I didn't really wear hats like that. And I liked it because it didn't really pull from anything else. Like, it was just dope in its own right. I was like, man, I bet I could kill that space if I figured out how to get in it. And it took me a while to find a manufacturer that would do cut and sew for 24 pieces or 25 pieces, whatever it was. And they did it because I did 3 at the time. They were like, well, we're doing 75. 2 of them are really similar. We'll make it happen for you. And these were the best selling products that I had ever brought to market. And so I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. At the time, I still had tees, I still had tank tops, I still had like different sizes of stuff. And I was like, man, if I do headwear, I don't really have to worry about sizing, which I do have to worry about. At the time, it was an ignorant thought, but now we're thinking about how to address the fact that there are a bunch of people with larger heads that don't really have dope stuff to wear. So we're definitely gonna do something that appeals to them as well. But at the time, it's like, if I do an adjustable hat, everybody can rock it. And so people started boom, 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 absorbing it. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do another run. And I'm gonna do another run. Not the same things, but different hats. And then I did a collection of like 5 or 6. And to this day, I still think God's hands were on those hats, because those were, I think that's my best collective of hats and ideas in one single session that I've created yet. And I've constantly been chasing that high ever since, until I did the hat that's on my head, the Sunika.
Can I see it?
Yeah, sure. I actually brought you a hat too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I get gifts?
Yeah, I brought you one, man. I brought you the Florida Man. So a lot of people don't know this, but the Florida flag, right? It's definitely trivial in its nature, right? Because you have this cross that's on it, so people liken that to a different flag. But what a lot of people don't realize is the Florida flag is actually one of the only flags in the United States that has a woman of color on it. And so on the seal, she's spreading flowers.
Yeah, I see it. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's like, to say it's dope doesn't do it justice. Like, there's not an adjective worthy enough of the description, because of the detail that you put into it. Like, a motherfucker could see this is not like your average. Like, this is actually, this is incredible, man. This is like, thank you for this.
Nah, no problem, man.
Shit. I'll be wearing this in the club. Yep.
There it is.
Which is something that I try to do a lot. I get brands that will give me stuff sometimes, and I try to wear it, tag, post about it, because I feel like as we kind of all have a responsibility to lend our support and our platforms to each other, if we for the greater good of as cliche as it sounds, pushing the culture forward. And I hate to say that, but you know what I mean?
And I think it still boils down to whether or not you like something, right? Personally, because I personally wouldn't want anybody wearing something that they didn't like. Right? And so, like, if they don't, then either we're gonna find something that you actually rock with, or we're gonna just you don't have to, right? But I do think though that there's a facet or a portion of the culture that doesn't understand the benefit in pushing the culture forward, right? Because let's say somebody like you, some young kid, high school kid, is building a brand, right? And his brand, it's not fully developed, but it's dope enough for you to like it, right? And he gives you something, and because of your platform, his brand grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't never know how far that person is gonna go, right? This person might then ultimately be, I don't know, a CEO of some massive brand. And then later on down the line, he's like, hey, we're doing a brand activation here. I want you to be the keynote speaker. I want you to be the main attraction, the main entertainment for this thing. I don't think a lot of people understand that. And so when like a lot of our athletes that grow up in the hood, they finally get to their first bag, the initial thing that they want to do, and I probably would be guilty myself, is go out and buy all the things that they never could buy as a kid. Like, so the thing for me that's like that is sneakers. I buy a lot of sneakers. But oftentimes they'll seek out, Prada, Gucci, Fendi, all of the luxury brands that they didn't have access to. Right. Not realizing that their platform now can build up brands that would probably also give them equity, right, for the assistance in building up the brand, that will ultimately position them to then be buttressed by this company that they didn't know about initially, just simply because they offered up their support. And I think that's something that we're learning as a people. I think it's happening. Like I've seen, like I saw Diddy gave a speech at his New Year's party about collaborating. And I saw that, I forget who it was. Fat Joe was talking to Khaled about, if we not calling each other to get that bag together, or if you know that there's a bag here and you ain't telling me about it, like, are we really friends? Right. And all of them, of course, collectively agree with that. But I think as a culture, we got to realize that it doesn't make sense to compete at this point, because the people that we really are competing with have already made it. Yeah. So if you're competing with somebody that's in a, kind of in the same wavelength than you, it doesn't necessarily make sense, because you're on the same trajectory, right? Unless they're, they do the exact same thing as you, like there's other hat companies, but I even would still collaborate with them. Like I don't think it waters down my brand. I don't think it does anything.
Right. What goes into your mindset, at least at this stage, when you're actually doing a design? Like what is the thing that you look for, the voice in your head that says, okay, for this hat, this has to be different than the 100 hats before it. What am I going to do differently? Like, what does that voice sound like to you?
So I think my hats reside in like 3 categories, right? So I got what I call slaps, and I'll explain that. I have like originals, and I have like these cultural centers, right? So the hat that you have on and the HBCU hat, those will be cultural centers. So those tie to a very specific audience that's proud of where they're from, or proud of where they've been, or proud of something, right? And it's really focusing in to create something that embraces and presents that audience in a way that they would be proud of. Like we just launched a hat called the Port-au-Prince hat.
I saw that. Yeah, amazing.
Thank you. And one of the things that I wanted to do in doing that, because I was approached to do that hat with a guy named Clifford, and he owns a company called Gravel World. They travel to Haiti twice a year, and he's also Haitian. But in doing this with him, I wanted to make sure that it was authentic, like that it was authentically Haitian, that it really embraced like the culture of Haiti, and the fact that they're like revolutionaries in their own right. So that central space is like kind of like where I spent a significant amount of time designing for, because I like intertwining and intermingling culture into the designs, and that spills over into the other 2 spaces. The slaps are taking something familiar and then turning it into something else.
Like the McDowell's hat.
Like the McDowell's hat.
Gotcha.
That's a slap.
Gotcha.
That's a slap. Or we have another hat that says GOAT, but it has a verified check in it, right? That's a slap. And so those are speaking to, more of a pop culture audience that's familiar with those things, right? It's speaking in their language with iconography, if I said that right. Iconography, something like that. Y'all know what you're talking about. But and then the third is originals. And so this is where I don't necessarily spend the most of my time now, but it's where I want to take the brand. And so in that space, it's more focused on product design than product embellishment, right? Okay. So like changing the silhouette of headwear. So thinking of different things that you can do and accomplish with headwear. So like a hat that we're coming out with later this year is called the Arsenal. Okay. And I'm not going to tell you too much, but think of a hat that an artist would want to wear that is almost like a cargo hat, right? When you think of cargo pants, you think of pockets. You think of like places where you can hold things. So think I could pull my pencil straight off my hat and go into to drawing. And so like this is something that doesn't exist on the market, something that we're going to play with. We're going to try it out. We're going to see if people actually respond to it. And that's the third place that we're in right now. And then so all of these are contained, and then there's an outrigger. The outrigger is collabs. Okay. So we have a collab this year with Airheads.
The candy?
Yeah, the candy. Yeah, and so we've been going back and forth on designs. Their team takes a little bit kind of long time to approve things, but we definitely have a good relationship. We're definitely gonna make it happen. We got two capsules that we're gonna be doing. One that hopefully happens before the summer. If it doesn't, it'll be in the winter, and then one that's happening in the summer. Right. And so,
have you ever thought about doing hats for like the carnival community, as far as like the Caribbean countries and like flag hats? I mean, I saw that the Haiti flag.
So that's one of many that's going to occur. Yeah. That's one of. So I actually already have the Haiti. Of course, the Haiti one's out there. We're doing one for Jamaica that's already designed. It's not in production yet, but in conjunction with that, there's about 5 others that we're gonna do in an initial run, and then we're gonna follow it up with pretty much the entire Caribbean. Guyana. Yeah, I figured. Y'all got a dope flag too, man. That joint is
very simple to design. I'm just saying, that golden arrowhead. Nah, that's dope, man. So what does the rest of 2020 look like for you guys? You got the collabs coming.
So 2020 I look at this as a building year for us. This is my first year 100% on the brand. Like, so I was working previously up until November 1st of last year.
Well, okay, so stop right there, because and I say this to people a lot. I speak at schools, I talk to friends about it, and I always say, I quote from Robert Greene, the author of 48 Laws of Power, and it's probably the 3rd time I've said it on this podcast, but in the book, The 50th Law, that he wrote with 50 Cent, there's an excerpt where he says, life rewards the risk takers. And the moment when you feel the most apprehensive, the most frightened to make that decision, that leap of faith, that's the exact moment when you are supposed to do it. And in that decision, life will give you your biggest reward.
I agree.
What happened to you in your mind that said, okay, I'm about to quit this job and just...
So I'll take it another excerpt from that same book. So if you've read that book, on the side of the pages, there's little stories, right? And so there's a little story, I can't remember what chapter it's in, but it's about a duck and a horse. Okay. And so the duck sees a horse drinking from a lake, right? And the duck swims up to the horse and he's like, ha ha ha, look at you. All you can do is walk. You can't even fly. You can't. And the horse is like, look at you. You can't do any of those things well, right? Like, you can't walk well, you can't swim well, and you can't fly well, right? And then, so I thought about that, and that kind of goes back to the jack of all trades, but not in the same sense. It was, I'm building this corporate career that's on a trajectory to like executive levels, but I know in my heart that's not what I want. So it's a false like desire. Like, I don't want it. I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in like playing the role in this bureaucracy. Like, nah, that's not my thing. That's not my thing. My thing is design, and the audience that even would embrace what I'm designing doesn't even reside in this office, right? So there's no even side benefit to it, no fringe benefit to me staying there, even though it was a great career. I worked with some great people. I just had to make a decision for myself. Now, making the jump was quite difficult because I have a young daughter. I have to consider the fact that she needs insurance. I have to consider the fact that she needs some legacy. So I did spend time stacking bread, making sure that I had all of that stuff situated. So I did take more of a measured risk than I would have if I didn't have a child. But the decision, like making the actual decision, I got frustrated with myself, because the way in which the corporate environment works is they create these milestones that make you want to stay for a little bit longer, right? Like, okay, you get a raise this time. All right, you get a bonus here. All right, we're gonna give you some stock here. And so I was gonna get allocated, like, I think it was like $5 or $6 grand in some stock options or something like that were vesting in November, or I thought it was November. So I was gonna leave like November 15th. Then I went and did my research and I saw it was December 15th. I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I can't stay this much longer. Like, I'm already clocked out. If I stay this much longer, like they gonna figure out that what is he here for? Like, he's not in this. And I was giving them, pretty much everything that they needed, but it it definitely was not my full potential towards the latter end. Yeah. And I just was like, if I'm not, one, I'm not giving this my full potential. Two, I'm not into it. Three, I'm not passionate about it. I need not do it. That's not what life is about. Yeah. If I leave here and I struggle and I suck, I still got my degree. I still got all this stuff. I could go back and work for somebody. Right. But if I don't leave here and I don't push my business to the max of its potential, what I'm gonna have is regret. Yeah. If I leave and I do it and I fail, I'm not gonna have regret because I learned along the process. And in my mind, I'm not gonna fail, you know. Yeah. And so far, it's been good, man. It's been real good. It's been real good. In the time that I've left since November, launched my site on a new platform, launched probably 6, 7, 8 new products, designed damn near all of 2020. That's happening. We booked multiple events. We'll be at South by Southwest in March. We'll be at Spring Coming Again. We'll be up there. That hat is actually already in manufacturing. We'll be at One Music Fest in Atlanta in September. We'll be at Dreamville Fest. We should be at Dreamville Fest. We're still in the application process for that. That is, I think, in July, if I'm not mistaken. And then April, we're trying to do something in the water. And so it's just consistent grind. We're getting ready to get a cargo van. I'm tired of taking all this stuff in my truck. And we're gonna brand that and do a bunch of pop-ups throughout the country, and then just pay attention to where our data says we haven't penetrated yet and go try to hit those audiences too.
Well, then, if you need a DJ at any of those pop-ups, 100%. I'm here for you, brother.
100%. Don't play.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you right now, and it's on camera, so I can't take it back. Right. You know what I mean? But I wish you nothing but success, man. I think what you're doing is incredible for the culture, for the fashion industry, and you know, I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm thankful for you sitting here and chopping it up.
Nah, I say the same thing, vice versa, man. I went to 2 of your events over the last week or so. And in both of those events, I networked with folks that I didn't know that I had synergies with. Mm-hmm. Some of which I was able to help, some people that are on vice versa. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think what you're doing in cultivating this audience, not only with the podcast, but also with how you're approaching DJing by creating opportunities for yourself, that's unusual, right? That's a bit against the grain, and I think it's gonna work in a positive way for you. So definitely blessings, my man.
Thank you, brother.
For sure.
Love, man. Love.
Yeah.